Welcome to Straight Talk Sacred Pathway. I'm Stuart Wellborn, a British author and former therapist, and each week I sit down with Wa-Na-Nee-Che, a spiritual elder from Turtle Island, to explore the deeper truths behind healing, ceremony, and connection to Source.
Okay, maybe we should do a whole half hour of economy or economy of comic relief.
Go for it. That's what the world needs right now. I mean,
Uh,
you're wearing a Broncos hat, so that shows you that you're a bit at a high level of comedy already.
yeah, I was laughing because the English language over here is so funny sometimes. It's unbelievable. Like you'll sit there and the guy will say, "I'll be right with you in a second or so." About half an hour later, he says, "Okay." The one I like the best though is when you go to a restaurant and the waiter or waitress comes up, you say, "Do you take orders?" And they say, "Yes, go clean my house." I used to have so many of them. You know, it's just like when you go to McDonald's, the drive-up window, and they have the pickup window, and you say, "What time do you get off?"
Oh, was
The
that
other
the
one is,
punchline?
ah,
Was that the punchline?
yeah. The other one I was in trying to figure out what town that was, North Hampshire, and I had this one butcher shop I used to go to time. He had real good meat. He used to age him a little, so it was always good and tender. So we got to know each other quite well. And he sat there one day. He said, he said, Wa-Na-Nee-Che, he said, I have good meat here. I said, yeah, but I'm barely making ends meet. I said, well, you got to look at it this way. He said, what's the name of your store? He says, Joe's Butcher. I said, how many Joe's Butchers are there in Northampton? He said, quite a few. Well, why don't you change your name? And he said, well, what can I change it to? Well, I got a suggestion. And he said, what? Hello, is it meat you're looking for? He tried to put his sign up there. He doubled his business.
He actually did it.
Yeah, yeah. People were, well, how come you come up with that name? you know, they were curious, so they start coming in. And once they found out that he had good meat and everything, then they start coming there all the time.
Well, that's interesting. I did something unintentional many years ago. I had a shop in a town called Belper, and it was a gift shop. I was not selling anything illegal or anything to do with bongs or anything like that, but I wasn't getting much trade. So outside, I put a sign in the window, and it said, in big letters, "I sell cannabis," and then underneath in small letters it said, "Incense sticks and other fragrances too."
Yeah, it's
And I
funny
got
how
front page of the local newspaper for that.
yeah, it's funny how things can happen, you know, that reflect on your business and get a lot of people coming in. I had a friend in Italy that did acupuncture and holistic healing, and he said he was doing all right. He said, but he wasn't doing that much business. So I told him, I said, when you get your cards, make them put the thing on health, not wealth. And he started getting a hell of a lot more people because they said, well, this guy's more concerned about our health than he is about the money.
It was a
So,
good idea.
yeah, the whole idea when it comes up with certain type of names, and how you can basically utilize them. And I remember my friend, he was a manager at Wendy's. I don't know if we have Wendy's over there. It's a kind of like Burger King, McDonald's.
I'm aware of it. I don't think we've got it over here, though.
And he knew me quite well. And I walked in. He said, "Dennis, yes, can I take your order?" I said, "Hell no." I said, "Once I pay for it, it's mine." As I said, George Carlin was really good at using things like that, little things, where he sat there. sat there, went to a hotel, and the guy said, would you like to leave your name? He said, what am I going to use? I really like him. He had really, he hit the nail right on the head. He got a little bit like in politics, but he always used to come up with some kind of way of getting people really hysterical when he used to talk. Just like one day he asked how many people he knew are religious. So they all raised their hand, and nobody did raise their hand. He said, how many of you go to church? They raised their hand again. He said, how many people of you go to church on Sunday? They raised their hand. He said, ladies and gentlemen, why do you go to church on Sunday? He's not there. He's on vacation. But he was one of my favorite comedians. He always come up with something.
Keep going if you want to keep telling some jokes for a bit. I'm sure you've got a full supply. There is somebody with us live. If you've got any questions, whoever's joining us live, put them in the chat and I'll put them to Wa-Na-Nee-Che. But go on, keep telling us some jokes.
Yeah. We were sitting there one day and I did a cartoon. And a guy was on the phone saying, hello? And the operator said, please stay on the line. Your call is very important. We will get to you as soon as possible. In the next picture, he's a skeleton, still has the phone to his ear, and he says, your call is important. It again.
You were many episodes ago. You were telling a joke, and it was about your mum talking to you, and that's why I was looking for the piece of paper because I found it again where I'd written it the note, and now I've lost a bit of paper again.
Oh, that wasn't the one where I came home and I asked my dad, if I was Ojibwa or Lakota, and he asked me, why do you want to know? I said, well, according to the history class today, they said the Ojibwas and the Lakotas were deadly enemies. He said, so? I said, Mom's Ojibwa, you're Lakota. My mom hollers out, don't worry, son, he had a slow horse. But that's when he taught me. My dad was very good at teaching things. And he sat there and I said, well, Dad, am I more Ojibwa or am I more Lakota? Or am I both? And he said, you're neither one, son. I said, what? I mean, I'm not an indigenous, I'm not a Native American Indian? He said, no. He said, you're indigenous. And I said, so what am I then? He said, all you have to understand, son, is that you're a human being. And that's it, period. He said, and more people would become human beings. He said, because you can't be a racist against the human race, even though they say black race, white race, Asian race. When it comes down to it, we're just human beings. He said, but people separate us by races so that we will never find an answer. Now, if they would put the other way, he said, discrimination against cultures, it's resolvable. You can resolve it. So that was one lesson. That was only like about maybe, I'd say maybe 7 years old. And I remember that just like it was yesterday.
He didn't get that from Little Big Man, did he?
I don't know where it could, he was a very good spiritual advisor.
I was kidding.
Trouble is, he would only share those things with me. He wouldn't share them with the rest of the kids for some reason. I think he knew that I had a connection, and so that he could explain things to me, and I would take it and utilize it in my later years. That's when we were on the hill one day, he sat there and he was putting his hands over different herbs, flowers. And I asked him, what are you doing, Dad? He said, well, I'm communicating with the flowers and the herbs because your sister is sick and I want to find the right herb or flower that will cure her. And I said, can you teach me that? He said, what do you see, son? Of course, I was kind of a little smart at the time. I said, "Well, Dad, I see the grass." I said, "I see you. I see the rocks." I said, "I see the earth." And he kind of laughed. He said, "No, what do you see coming out of my hand?" And I said, "I don't see anything." He said, "Well, when I go and I speak with the plants, I use colors. I know the color that your sister has because she's unbalanced. So I'm looking for the color that will balance her." I looked at him. I said, "Can you teach me that?" He said, "Well, if you can't see the colors coming from my hand, the gift's not for you." He said, "You have your own gift and they'll reveal it to you." He said, "I can't tell you what it is because if I tell you what it is, then I own it and you don't. So when you have it and you have your vision and they tell you, you'll believe it because it belongs to you. I didn't tell you. You got it directly from the source." But that's how he used to teach me all the time. The whole idea is always use things to make me understand and ask me what I think. Then I would tell him, and then he would correct things. But too many was, yeah, like what I was going to say, kids, they ask a question. And what do? We try to answer it, or we say, we don't know. When it simply say, how do you see it to the child? And the child will actually explain it and get the answer rather than us telling them maybe something wrong that's not what it means. But by asking him, instead of him saying why, you ask why. You reverse it. And a lot of times the child himself will come up with the answer.
Funny enough, you mentioned that about 7 episodes ago, and I know that because I was editing that short clips of it today. I don't know why. So that's a spooky thing, obviously worth repeating. I just want to rewind earlier. You said your dad said that. No, you said that you were taught at school that the Lakota and the Ojibwa were enemies. Right? How? When was that then? And
Oh,
why?
gee. I was probably my first year in high school, so probably ninth grade.
No, I mean, when were they enemies?
Where?
When were they enemies?
Well, according to history, I think it came from the beginning when the Lakota, Nakota, and Dakota became Sioux. And Sioux does not mean friend. I'm not going to say what it meant, but it was derogatory. And they tried to take the family over, and they were kicked out of Canada. And then they moved into Wisconsin, parts of North Dakota, South Dakota, and then because of that first battle they had when they got kicked out of the Wichita, they were always at odds with each other. So that's when they were talking about in history class that that they were a part of what they call the Red Hand family, where everybody was equal and they all belonged to you know different type of tribe names, but they were all human beings and they were all related. And then that's when things start to change.
Was this before or after the Europeans arrived?
This is before.
Ah. So you said there was a battle. What what kind of battle then?
Well, the way I was told was that the Lakota, Nakota, Dakota tried to take over the family because they disagreed that a woman should have that type of power. And so they started to attack some of the elders. Well, they talk about sending out the Red Hand. And the way I was told was that there was a there was around 10,000 Dakota, Nakota, and Dakotas that started the war. Well, the Red Hand went out, and when they attacked, they were met by the Red Hand, and the Red Hand had 200,000 warriors because it was all the tribes in Canada that united. and then they asked him to leave Canada.
So it wants an actual physical battle then.
Yeah. And if you notice that when you look at their culture, the woman really doesn't have that much power. Whereas in the original, the woman had almost all the power. That's why you had your longhouses, where the women were actually the heads of tribes. And they made decisions because, number one, that's why there weren't really any wars all the time. It was because when the women were in control, they didn't want their kids to be killed. So they always used negotiations. Like when they had a disagreement, they would do a game. And whoever won the game got first decision. They got like the first to be on the hunting ground. But they always played by the rules. They would only take what they needed, and then they would leave so that the other tribes would come in and take what they needed. They were always sharing.
Got a question for you that's come in about your guided meditation. If I'm wording it correctly, if you're still watching us, you can always type in the chat if I get it wrong. But why is your guided meditation the only thing that can help? Are there not other teachings that can help people to connect?
Well, the meditation, again, in order for you to understand and start connecting, you got to get rid of the control the mind has. And that is the only CD that will basically, when you go into the CD, it's your vision, it's your journey. I don't sit there and say, here comes the bear, and the bear hands you a gift. No, they decide what energies come to them, what energies can help them in resolving problems that they have or explaining certain things that they have to get rid of in that subconscious that controls. So the CD itself is geared like no other CD. And that is number one, it introduces you to you. So when you go through that CD, the only thing that I tell people to do is don't try to interpret it by thinking about it. Think of what the first gift was, who gave it to you, and then say the first picture that comes into your head, go with it. But too many people, no, I can't mean that. It must mean something else. Well, as soon as they do that, they've lost the whole point of the CD. But the CD is meant to lessen the control that the mind has and put you more in control of your own life force energy. So there's no other CD that does this. That's why I was going to say also, that's why it's important that if people want to really understand how to interpret it, that's why I would run workshops. And then I would go through and they say, well, no, that's right on. How'd you do it? I said, because I didn't think. The minute you said it, boom, something flashed and I went with it. I never second guessed it. I said, as human beings, we always want to second guess something. We don't want to believe the first thing that we see. And it's funny because like you're taking a test and it's multiple choices. And the question's there, and he says, oh, C. And you mark C, and then you say, well, I don't know about that. And you go back and you erase the C and you put D. You get back, C was the answer.
Yeah.
When we second guess a lot of times, again, we so we have to go with our first thought right away because that's usually the one that tells you what the whole meaning is of what you're going through.
Is there another way to do it though?
Well, the other way too is that how do you clear the control of the mind? Now, there's an exercise. Remember, I showed you before where you can sit there and when you're working with someone, you put your hand over their head. I usually use this symbol when I put it over the head. And then I ask the Creator to allow me to call upon the life force energies that will help this individual. So then I say, I go to whatever direction you want to start off. So I say, I go to the north and ask the life force energies that will help this individual to come. I go to the east, go to the south, go to the west, and I call in those that can come and help me bring balance to the individual. So I still have my hand over their head. And then what I usually do too is I have them put their hands together before I start. And I tell them, now bring your hands apart and tell me when you don't feel the energy or the heat. So when they stop, then I sit there and I look at it and I know exactly where the problem lies. And that is life force energy isn't circulating. It's being trapped. So when I put my hand over their head, then I switch and I put one hand in the back of their neck and one hand on the forehead because now you want to pull the energy. First of all, you're pulling energy in from the outside, and that energy is going into the life force energy. And then once it hits the life force energy, then you draw it up. And a lot of people, I sit there and say, well, I said, put your hand over your head. They say, what do you feel? Well, nothing. So then one way you can do it too is you make a little insertion of a triangle. Then you tell them, put your hand up there. I feel air because you opened them up. So this, then you can draw the life force energy to your hand. And once you push to your hand, you push the energy down into the life force energy from the back, and then you force the energy to come forward to your hand. And you sit there several times and let her do it so that you're circulating. And once you get finished circulating, then you take your hand away, and then you sit and you pull all the negative energy out by grabbing your nose and dispersing it to Mother Earth. Now, when that happens, then the next thing I do is I close the opening. Now, when they do their hand exercise, their energy has increased. And that tells you that they're balanced now. And I said, if you practice it a lot, eventually you'll get to a point where all you have to do is close your eyes and you can see the process. And it works. If you have a backache, a lot of times it's because your energy isn't flowing. It's trapped. So once that happens, you'll find out the pain in your back is gone. Because now the energy is circulating. And once you can get the energy circulating, then there are certain ceremonies you can go do to see if you're ready to receive the information, and that you start to control. Every time you use that CD, a little bit of the mind goes. It's like Linda was asking, she said, well, it doesn't work anymore. Well, Linda got to a point where she was there. She didn't need it anymore. She could actually resolve her own issues, but she became a little bit too dependent on the CD. Well, the CD will only work when you reach that level. And then you don't need it anymore because you're connected.
What happens next then after you're connected?
Well, when they have their, say for instance, have a vision, not a dream, but a vision, they can interpret it. Because they've learned not to let the mind get involved. And a lot of times it does make sense, like I said before, wait. Eventually all of a sudden the bells will go off. That's what it meant. So it'll be, and if it doesn't come, it's not meant to be yet. Gotta have patience.
A couple of weeks ago, you said you were working on your White Eagle medicine book / cards.
Well, it's actually, I renamed it. It's called Life Force Energy.
Are you? How's that coming along at the moment?
I still got to transform it to the computer, and then it's all it has to be is translated now to the computer, and I have to add a few things that I got little things on my computer. It must have like 100 different things I put down. Now I got to put them all back together, and it's called the Life Force Energy. And when I said the life force energies on the bottom line. It says get connected. So that's my little phrase, get connected. Because I tried that one with the White Eagle one time. I wasn't really selling that many. So I sat there and I went home. And I went home and I went to the hotel and I had my computer. And I put out some little yellow labels that said, caution, utilizing these cards may cause visions. I sold out. The next day I sold a little over 150 books. It's just a little bit of saying. That little saying, I said, that little saying, caution, just playing with these cards will cause visions. That did it.
You should go into marketing.
Well, I used to help quite a few people, and I made maybe 5 or 6 people here in Denver millionaires. Then they forgot my name.
Do you want to help me make me a millionaire?
Yeah, because a lot of things too is that one way that I help people is that I tell them, ask questions. And as they're reading something, I listen. I say, okay, go back again, read it again, and read it again, and say, okay, got it. And I reword everything.
So when do you think your will it be classed as a second edition, or will it be a whole new entity? The
Uh,
cards.
it depends on my laziness.
So
Yeah.
if we
Well,
take on board the
actually,
laziness, then what's the lazy
I'm
approach
kind of
going to be?
waiting for my tax return. It still hasn't come, and that should have been in. I did it in February. No, yeah, in February, and it should have been at the end of April, and I'm still waiting for it. It's June, and I contacted them. They said it's been approved, but I don't see it in my bank account yet. But I'll probably use that, and then I'll talk to Derek once I get it done, because Derek has somebody that can proofread it, and then we can send it to some of his contacts because he's got contacts with publishing companies that can do it for about half the price that most companies want to do it for.
So when do you think you'll have the new edition out then?
Well, uh, it all depends on what happens in November because with all the restrictions going on with traveling right now, it's hard to get out of the country, and it's even harder to get back into the country because they check everything. If you have your phone, they check your phone and your texts and everything like that to see that you don't say anything bad about Trump.
Yeah, I'm aware of that.
Now, the midterms will probably determine a lot. And like I said, at that particular time too, right now it's with the gas price and the fuel's going up, the price of traveling has really gone up.
But you don't need to travel to do your cards, surely, and your book.
Yeah, so once I get the book out, then I'll start contacting like festivals, mind, body, and spirit festivals, and then come over because they generally give me a free booth and they pay for my hotel, and then I give them 1 or 2 lectures. And I found out that by me speaking, a lot of them increase their people who come in by 15 to 20%. They definitely make a lot of money off me.
You didn't answer my question though about when's the second edition going to be out then?
Probably next year.
Next year.
Yeah. That way, and they start setting things up for me to go over there. And it's cheaper for me to have the book sent to England than it is to have it sent here.
I don't want to dwell on the politics because we've only got 8 minutes left, but if the midterms go the way you're hoping, how does that affect your policies? Like because you said about the checks on your phone coming into the country. Will that have any effect on that?
They kind of leave Facebook alone and YouTube alone, unless it's a threatening. email, a threatening post. And that's what they usually watch for. The other stuff is, so you talk about things, big deal. If it's not a threatening thing, they just let it go. And there's so much activity on YouTube, and they can't check the whole thing all the they they kind of gear it certain areas, and then that's it.
But I don't know if you were answering my question or not there. If the midterms put more Democrats in the House or whatever it is, so that they've got the power, will they overturn those rules then?
Oh, definitely.
Right.
Only that, but that's why Trump is so scared because he even said it himself. He said, if the Democrats win the House and the Senate, I'm going to jail. And he is, and the whole thing is that I think his whole staff is going to go because of what they've been doing.
Be interesting to see. There is another question. We've
Okay,
got 6 minutes left. Um, why weren't white people born connected?
born connected.
Yeah,
Well, again,
I
a
don't know
lot
if
of
that's
people.
actually a true point
Okay,
or not, but
I was born connected,
hmm?
and I was born connected, and I was born connected, and I was born connected, but I didn't finish a job. I didn't finish what I was supposed to be doing. What I'm doing now, I should have been doing long ago. So when a person gets, I always say, gets recycled, they get recycled for a purpose, and most of them that get recycled have the gift. But a lot of them basically who are get recycled basically are because they didn't learn their lesson in the first place. But there are those who basically, again, like the Dalai Lama, who gets reincarnated, but when he gets reincarnated, he has all the knowledge. So there are certain people that, when they're born, they have the knowledge. When uh, when Matthew was born, I sat there and I said, "Give me a sign." And out of nowhere, just before his head came out, there was a lightning and a thunder, and he was born. So he was born under a thunder and lightning, which basically means he was part of the Thunderbird clan.
you didn't answer the question though. Why weren't white people born with that connection like the indigenous people of Turtle Island?
Indigenous people, again, terminology. Those who believe to be they're real people of the earth. So that means everybody who's connected with the earth will come back into this world as a special person, as being connected. So any in the human race, as long as they have that connection with being human beings, real human beings, they come connected.
I don't know if I'm interpreting the question because I'm only asking the question. I'm gonna do what I think the question is asking in is to say why you people were born connected to nature and all that kind of stuff, yet white people seem to have just wanted to come and invade and do that kind of stuff. I don't know if that's what she's getting at.
Best way to put it is everybody's born connected. It's just that we lose that connection because of how society and how you say influence the individuals. We're always connected. We just lose that connection.
Oh, I agree. Personally, I agree. I'm just asking the question that's been posed.
Everybody has that ability to be connected. But the way we do it, you know, when we're born, the first thing we do is we have four walls, our crib. Whereas in the indigenous way, you went out, and that's why the cotton tree is known as a birth tree, because they would dig a hole in front of the tree, and that's where the baby was born, but it was part of nature already. It had a hole where the baby came out, so it's already connected to the earth. So everybody is born, I guess, what Matthew said, everybody is born with that connection, but society drills that connection out of you.
Yeah, I'd agree with that because I wouldn't have said that white people historically have always been forgetful of their connection to nature.
Well, let's take Europe. There are certain leaders that came out in Europe, in Asia, in Africa, and they were connected because they could see things. Nostradamus, okay, was gifted.
Or mad.
So certain people were given certain understanding and certain knowledge. But people always, like I said, people want to have that individual knowledge when they should be finding their own knowledge.
2-minute warning. I just thought I'd say that since you got your hat on.
And people actually, depending on when you're in that womb, what type of thoughts were in your mother's thoughts, that was transferred into the baby. So again, a lot of things that she did, it was transferred to the child before it was even born.
Any closing thoughts before we sign off for this week? Or a final joke?
Got any jokes there, Matthew? He shook his head, no. Was trying to think of something, when it's like when Trump went to hell and he went to a party, then he left and came back, and it was desolated. They said, why is it desolated? Oh, we were just practicing your thing about lying. It worked. We're here.
Thank you for those that joined us live, because there was a few of you. You should ask questions, those that have joined us live, next time that you join us.
Yeah, you had the blind guy and the deaf man. They were walking, and the blind guy asked the deaf guy, "Can you see?"
Thanks for listening to Straight Talk Sacred Pathway. If you'd like to ask Wa-Na-Nee-Che a question, you can email me at stuart@realityresponsibility.com. The link will be in the description. And don't forget, you can download a powerful guided meditation for free at humancircleoflife.com.